the heartland of America, a place often associated with peace and tranquility. But in the shadows of St. Louis, Missouri, a storm was brewing. A terror unfolded in the early 2000s. It left behind a trail of fear and despair. At the center of this nightmare was Maury Travis, a name that would forever be etched in the annals of criminal history. Maury Travis sought out women on the fringes of society. These were individuals who had already been marginalized, living on the edge of a world that often turned a blind eye to their existence. He preyed on those he believed wouldn't be missed. In the shadows of the city, he found his victims, those who had slipped through the cracks of society's safety nets. Sex workers, drug addicts, and transients became his targets. These were people who, in many cases, had no one to turn to, no one who would notice their absence immediately. They were invisible to many, but to Travis, they were easy prey, their vulnerabilities an open invitation to his twisted desires. He saw in them an opportunity to fulfill his darkest fantasies without fear of immediate repercussion. He would lure them with promises of money or drugs. These offers were often too tempting to resist for those struggling to survive day by day. Sometimes he used his physique, presenting himself as someone who could offer protection in a dangerous world. His imposing presence was both a lure and a trap. But behind his facade was a sinister intent. His charm and promises were merely tools to ensnare his victims, a darkness that yearned to inflict pain and suffering. His true nature was one of cruelty and malice, hidden beneath a veneer of helpfulness. The discovery of the first body sent shockwaves through St. Louis. The city, already grappling with its own issues, was now faced with a terrifying new threat. The details were too gruesome to ignore. The brutality of the crime scenes left an indelible mark on the community and law enforcement alike. The city's worst fears were confirmed. The realization that a serial killer was among them created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. They were dealing with a serial killer. The police ramped up their efforts, knowing that the clock was ticking to prevent further loss of life. As more bodies surfaced, a pattern emerged. Each crime scene told a story of suffering and brutality, each victim a testament to Travis's cruelty. Each victim bore the marks of Travis's brutality. The forensic evidence painted a grim picture of his methods and the suffering he inflicted. What made Travis's crimes even more chilling was the way he documented them. He didn't just commit these heinous acts, he meticulously recorded every detail, as if he were creating a twisted archive of his own malevolence. Each entry, each video, was a testament to his dark obsession. He kept meticulous records of his dark deeds. His notes were detailed, almost clinical, describing every act of violence with a disturbing detachment. It was as if he was documenting an experiment, rather than the brutal reality of his actions. These weren't just trophies for a twisted ego, they were a window into the mind of a monster. Each image, each note, each video clip was a piece of a horrifying puzzle, revealing the depths of his depravity. In his videos, the full extent of his depravity was revealed. The grainy footage showed scenes of unimaginable horror, each frame a testament to his cruelty. The videos were not just recordings, they were a form of psychological torture, meant to instill fear and despair. They showed the torture and murder of his victims. The blurred faces and pixelated images couldn't hide the agony and terror of those he tormented. Each video was a chilling reminder of the pain he inflicted, a dark chronicle of his sadistic pleasure. He narrated his actions in a chillingly calm voice. His tone was almost soothing, a stark contrast to the horror he was describing. It was as if he was recounting a mundane event, rather than the brutal reality of his crimes. It was as if he was detached from the horror he was inflicting, lost in his own world of sadistic fantasy. His eyes, cold and emotionless, reflected a mind devoid of empathy, a soul consumed by darkness. But Travis's documentation didn't stop there. He was not content with just recording his crimes, he wanted to share his twisted world with others. He created a blog, a dark corner of the internet where he could chronicle his fantasies and deeds. He went a step further, creating a blog where he would chronicle his dark fantasies. Each post was a window into his mind, filled with detailed descriptions of his crimes and the pleasure he derived from them. It was a place where he could revel in his own darkness, free from the constraints of the real world. He wrote about his crimes in detail, reveling in the pain he inflicted. His words were a twisted celebration of his own cruelty, a dark testament to his sadistic nature. Each post was a chilling reminder of the evil that lurked within him. He used the blog to taunt the authorities, believing himself to be invincible, untouchable. His arrogance was evident in every word, a mocking challenge to those who sought to stop him. It was as if he was daring them to catch him, confident in his own superiority. The St. Louis Police Department faced a formidable task. The pressure was on to find the person responsible for these horrific crimes. They pored over evidence, desperately searching for any clue that could lead them to the killer. The city held its breath, waiting for answers. Travis seemed to vanish into thin air. He was a ghost, leaving a trail of bodies but no trace of his identity. The case went cold for months, the lack of progress fueling public fear and frustration. Just when hope seemed to dwindle, a breakthrough. A woman escaped Travis's clutches. She had been held captive, subjected to unimaginable horrors. But she managed to break free, her survival a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The survivor's testimony was crucial. She provided the police with their first real lead, a description of Travis and the location where he held her captive. The police descended upon the address. Inside, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. The house was a charnel house, its walls stained with the blood of Travis's victims. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos, videos, and written accounts of his crimes were scattered throughout the house. He had meticulously documented every detail of his reign of terror. Travis had fled before the police arrived, but the net was closing in. His face was plastered all over the news. The city was on high alert. It was only a matter of time before he was caught. Justice cut short. Suicide in prison. The manhunt for Maury Travis ended not with a dramatic standoff, but with a whimper. After months of evading law enforcement, his capture was almost anticlimactic. He was apprehended during a routine traffic stop, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt end. The officers who arrested him had no idea they had just captured one of the most notorious criminals of their time. He was incarcerated, awaiting trial for his crimes. The prison walls that now confined him were a stark contrast to the freedom he had once abused. Behind bars, Travis's facade crumbled. The bravado that had once defined him was replaced by a haunting silence. The bravado he had displayed in his videos and blog posts vanished. His online persona, once so menacing, now seemed like a distant memory. He was a broken man, facing the consequences of his actions. The weight of his crimes bore down on him, and the reality of his situation became inescapable. In a final act of cowardice, Travis took his own life in his prison cell. The echo of the cell door closing was the last sound he heard, a grim punctuation to his story. He left behind a legacy of pain and unanswered questions. The families of his victims were left to grapple with their grief, their hopes for justice forever dashed. His suicide was a final insult to the families of his victims. They had been denied the chance to see him held accountable in a court of law, to hear him answer for the lives he had destroyed. They would never see him face justice, never hear him answer for his crimes. The empty defendant's chair in the courtroom stood as a stark reminder of the justice that would never be served. Unanswered questions and the search for closure. The death of Maury Travis did little to quell the horror of his crimes. If anything, it amplified the mystery. Why did he target these women? What drove him to commit such unspeakable acts? Some experts believe Travis suffered from a severe personality disorder, his psyche warped by a lifetime of twisted fantasies. Others speculate that he was driven by a need for power and control, his victims merely pawns in his sick game. Whatever the reason, Travis's motives died with him. His victims' families were left to grapple with the devastating loss and the unanswered questions that haunted their every waking moment. The enduring impact of Travis's crimes. The legacy of Maury Travis continues to cast a long shadow over St. Louis. His crimes left an indelible mark on the city, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary places. The families of his victims continue to struggle with their loss. They have shown incredible resilience, coming together to support one another and keep the memory of their loved ones alive. The case also highlighted the vulnerability of marginalized communities. Travis preyed on women who were often overlooked and forgotten. Their deaths served as a tragic reminder of the need for greater compassion and understanding. Remembering the victims confronting evil. The story of Maury Travis is not just about a monster and his crimes, it's about the lives he took and the countless others he impacted. It's about the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable evil. We remember the victims not for how they died but for how they lived. We honor their memory by fighting for justice, demanding accountability, and working to prevent such tragedies from happening again. The evil that Maury Travis unleashed upon the world may be gone, but the scars it left behind remain. It is our duty to learn from the past, to confront the darkness, and to strive for a future where such horrors are never repeated.